So this is the family policy, adult dependent relatives. And this policy, this is the version 5. It was published by the Home Office on 7th of August 2023. You have contents over here, all the details. So I'll ignore all the irrelevant details and I'll keep going down. Okay, so we will start from here. An applicant for this route must be outside the UK. A person cannot switch to this route in the UK. In summary, an applicant under the ADR route must, as a result of age, illness, or disability, require long term personal care. That is, help performing everyday tasks, for example, washing, dressing, and cooking. Be unable, even with the practical and financial help of the sponsor, to obtain the required level of care in the country where they are living because it is not available and there is no person in that country who can responsibly provide it or because it is not affordable. Entry clearance officer must be satisfied that the applicant will be adequately maintained, accommodated, and cared in the UK by the sponsor without the recourse of the public funds. So the applicant should not take any public funds when they are in the UK. They must sign 5-year undertaking to that effect at the clearance stage. This undertaking must cover a period of 5 years from the date the applicant arrives in the UK. Now let's go further. We'll ignore the suitability requirement, anti-clearance. Okay, this is important. The immigration rule also set out a minimum level of care that the applicant requires for the sponsoring relatives. The applicant must be unable, with the practical and financial help of the sponsor, to obtain the required level of care in the country where they are living. This would be applicable where the sponsor parents or grandparents do not have access to the required care and there is no person in the country where they are living who can reasonably provide it and it is not affordable. Both the things are important, that it's not reasonably provided or it's not affordable. Where a couple who are both the parents and grandparents of the sponsor are applying as an adult dependent relative, only one of them must require long term personal care. So, this is very important part, that only one of them must require long term personal care. Both must apply at the same time, and the partner must be unable to offer care. So, when we are talking about the husband and wife, so if any one of them can take care of the other person, refusal will be, the application will be rejected. So, both of them must apply, and the partner must be unable to offer care. Financial requirements, let's discuss that. The applicant must be able to provide evidence to prove they can adequately maintained, accommodated, and cared in the UK by the sponsor without the public funds. Now, let's see the requirements. Require long term personal care as a result of age, illness, or disability. So, in this, it clearly states the applicant must require long term personal care to perform everyday tasks, for example, washing, dressing, and cooking. This means that they must not be incapable of performing such everyday tasks by themselves, such as result of serious accident resulting in long term incapacity. So, for example, if anyone had an accident or it could be the result of the due to the several years, the evidence required to show the blow. So, for example, anyone who got involved with the accident and wanted to come to UK permanently, and in that case, unable to receive the required level of care in the country where they are living. The applicant must demonstrate that the applicant has no access to the required level of care in the country where they are living, even with the practical and financial help of the sponsor. This is a very confusing part because the sponsor is willing to sponsor them when they are in the country in the UK, but is not providing financial help when they are outside the UK. So that need to be justified. We'll discuss that later on in this video. This could be because it is not available and there is no person in that country who can reasonably provide it, or because it is not affordable. So on the basis of affordability, you can't put that, because obviously if you can't afford where while you are in the UK, then how will you pay them when they will be in the UK? So in that case, you need to provide the evidence, but the justification can be provided easily for the reasonable person that there is no one who can take care of them. The entry clearance officer ECO will cover both what care is available and whether it's realistically available accessible to the applicant. So the ECO will decide that. Now let's discuss further. No person in that country who can reasonably provide that care. The ECO should consider whether there is anyone in the country where our applicant is living who can reasonably provide required level of care. This might be close family, son, daughter, sister, grandparents, parents, a wider family member, friends, neighbors, or another person who can reasonably provide the care required. For example, a home help, housekeeper, nurse, or a carer or a nursing home. So, if any one of these helps are available, then this visa will get refused. In that case, none of these help should be available in that country. Only in that case, you can apply this visa. The ECO should bear in mind any relevant cultural factor. So, this is important and this is very helpful, such as in countries where women are unlikely to be able to provide support in some circumstances. Women can't go out and work, they can't drive, all these kind of things. The accommodation in which the applicant will live in the UK must be owned or occupied by the sponsor. The ECO must be satisfied and adequate maintained, and the level of required level of care can and will be met by the sponsor in the UK without the recourse of the public funds. So basically, you should not take any funds. That's the same repetition. Maintenance may be provided by the sponsor or by any combination of the funds available to the sponsor and the applicant. So if the applicant got some good amount of funds in their bank and applicant also got the funds, so that joint combination of funds can be used towards this. But the question again arises, if the funds are there, then why they are not helping through that fund? Okay, now we will discuss the most important part where they have given examples, and these examples are not provided by randomly, but they are provided by the Home Office. So we will study each example, and this will give you the better idea what we are discussing about. Okay, example number one. So let's discuss that. A person aged 25 has a learning disabilities, and that means he cannot feed, wash, or dress himself. His parents with whom he lived. Have recently died in an accident, and only surviving close relative in a brother in the country who has been sending money to the family for some time. Okay, I'll quickly read this first, so that will be better for understanding. The person has been cared for temporarily by family member since his parents died, but they are no longer able to do this. The sponsor is unable to meet the course cost of the full time residential care, and let's make it bigger. It will be easy to read. Okay, so where we are. but they are no longer be able to do this. The sponsor is unable to meet the cost of full-time residential care, but he and his family have sufficient financial and other means to care for the applicant in their home. This could meet the criteria if the applicant can demonstrate that they are unable, even with the practical and financial help of the sponsor, to obtain the required level of care in the country where they are living because it is not available, and is no person there is no person in that country who can reasonably provide it, or it is not affordable. So if you have this kind of scenario, in that scenario you can get the visa. So basically a person can't afford, like they can afford in the UK with the amount they got, they cannot afford pay to the care home and all that. In that case they can get the visa, and it's a very good example. Okay, let's discuss the second example. A person age 30 has lived alone in Sri Lanka for many years. His parents are settled in the UK. Okay, that's fine. Other siblings lives in UK and USA. The person has recently been involved in the road accident and as a result has developed a long-term condition which means that they cannot no longer take care of themselves. The mother has been visiting Sri Lanka to care for her son, but need to return to the UK to care for her younger children. This could meet the criteria if the applicant can demonstrate that they are required unable to with the practical and financial help of the sponsor to obtain the required level of care in the country where they are living because it is not available, and there is no person in that country who can reasonably provide it, and it is not affordable and other relevant. So for example, a woman got the kids in the UK and the kids goes to school, so she can't move those kids cause of that person, of that son or that family member to Sri Lanka. So that the person who is in Sri Lanka can come to UK and stay with them. Okay, third one, example number 3. A person age 70 lives alone in the India. A daughter lives in the UK. A very common scenario with all the skilled worker visas, basically. Her son and his family lives in the UAE. Okay, the daughter sends her mother's money to pay for someone to do her cleaning, but is concerned that her mother is becoming increasing frail and forgetful. This would not meet the criteria as the applicant is able to perform everyday tasks and or has help available with these tasks because she's sending the money, so there is a like person who can take care of her, so that's why this criteria won't meet. This is a very common criteria for the skilled worker visas. Example number 4. Person aged 26 entered the UK as a visitor. His parents and younger siblings are settled in the UK. The applicant lived in Canada to complete his education. He has diabetes, which is managed by medication. This would not meet the applicant is able to perform everyday task and he cannot apply for the. So if anyone who can meet the criteria can come on this visa, otherwise no. So the most important criteria is they can manage everyday task or not. Example number 5. A person aged 85 lives alone in Pakistan. With the onset of age, he has developed a very poor eyesight, which means that he has had of series of falls, one of which has resulted in a hip replacement. Okay, that's very common. His son lives in the UK and sends money to enable his father pay for a carer to visit each day to help him wash and dress and cook meals for him. This would not meet the criteria because the sponsor is available to arrange the required level of care in Pakistan. Hope you got that idea that in that case it's not available. Okay. Example number 6. Let's discuss that. A person age 45 lives in China and whose widows 5 years ago. They are disabled and cannot perform everyday tasks for themselves. Their son lives in the UK. The person lives with their new husband in China. Okay. The son wants his mother to come and live with him in the UK. This would not meet the criteria because the applicant is in a subsisting relationship with a partner who is not sponsored parent. Okay. So this is another example because like got married like twice, so that's why um, they cannot get the visa. Okay, example number 7. A person and a wife, both age 70, live in Pakistan. A very common scenario again. Their daughter lives in the UK. The wife requires long-term personal care, owning to ill health and cannot perform everyday tasks for herself. Okay, so the wife is ill basically. The husband is in good condition. Okay, but cannot provide his wife with the level of care she needs. Okay, let's discuss that. They both want to come to UK and live in the UK. The daughter can care for her mother full time in her home and she does not work whilst her husband provides the family with an income from his employment. So the husband is working full time, the daughter is not working. Her sister in the UK also helped with the care of her mother. Okay, the sister is also in the UK, so both the daughters are in the UK. The applicant provide the ECO with the planned care arrangement in the UK. This could meet the criteria if the applicant can demonstrate that they are unable, even with the practical and financial help of the sponsor, to obtain the required level of care in the country where they are living because it is not available and there is no person in that country who can reasonably provide it or is not affordable when other relevant criteria are met. So this is a very good example, which is a positive one, that two daughters staying in UK and mom and dad staying in Pakistan, but woman, his wife is ill, so that's why husband can't take care of wife, so daughters can, so they can get the visa. Okay, so that was very. Uh, let's make it smaller now. Okay, so evidence in support of the applications. So let's discuss that. Medical evidence that the applicant physical or mental condition means that they are require long-term personal care because they can perform everyday tasks, for example, washing, dressing, and cooking. They must be from a doctor or other health professional. Okay, so they need to provide a medical report regarding, and it should be a proper evidence clearly mentioning that they can do example of washing, dressing, and cooking, the basic example basically. Okay, evidence that the applicant is unable, even with the practical and financial help of the sponsor in the UK, to obtain required level of care in the country where they are living. If the required care has been provided through a private arrangement, the applicant must provide details of that arrangement and why it is no longer available. So, for example, previously they were living over there for X amount of years and there was a private arrangement, but all of a sudden, no private arrangement available. So, what happens usually in like you apply for your parents' visitor visa, they come to UK. In your visitor visa, you mention that they are very capable of everything. So, all of a sudden, you mention this, no, they are not capable. That will create a confusion. So, you need to provide evidence for that. Is not or is no longer available or affordable in the country where the applicant lives. If payment is currently being made for care or was made previously, the ECO should ask to see records of such payment and explanation of why this cannot be continued. If the financial support has been provided by the sponsor or close family in the UK, ECO should ask for the explanation and why this cannot continue or is no longer sufficient to enable that required level of care. So you need to provide the evidence to the ECO. Evidence of maintaining funds, accommodation, care. We discussed that. Okay, what are the evidence they need? So let's discuss that. This is the last bit. Original bank statement covering last 6 months, pay slips, savings, shares, all these things. Relevant information, for example, council tax, utilities, bills, all that. A copy of mortgage, tenants agreement, or if you have already purchased the property, then the title deed, planned care arrangement of the applicant in the UK, which can involve other family members in the UK, and the cost of these must be met by the sponsor without undertaking the third party support. So you can't take support from anyone. You have to provide all the stuff. The sponsor must provide everything by themselves, and you need to provide the planned care arrangement because you mentioned that they can't take care over there. So how they will take care in the UK? You need to provide that. Okay. This is, I think that's it. We'll go further. We'll go right up to the end. Okay, this is the last page, so that's fine. So we have covered everything regarding this. And if you have any question, feel free to contact me, and I'll get back to you.